Hello, Ibu Christine Manara and friends. I am Adewindia Narkina. I'm going to present a journal review entitled Language Socialization and Identity, Intercultural Communication Experience of Chinese Students in a Transnational University in China, conducted by Anu Emio and Mingyu Michelle Gu. Okay, let's talk about the reasons behind this study first. Speaking about intercultural communication is always interesting because it is interactions among individuals in different cultural and linguistic environments, along with the dynamic dimensions of the interpersonal itself, such as gender and then age, social status, ethnicity, and many more variables. This dynamic dimension then led us to think about the power issues in it. And the power issues can release the group discrimination among those multilingual speakers who are involved in that intercultural communication. Another issue is regarding English as the academic lingua franca. It becomes the disadvantage for the non-native English speakers students because they become challenged to develop their own identity, such as their ethnicity. In terms of the number of study, most of the studies related to this topic were conducted in Western context, and it is interesting to look at this topic in an Asian context because extensive growth of international programs in Asia is coming up. By those considerations, the researchers proposed two purposes of the study by addressing two research questions. The first one is, how do Chinese students experience linguistic socialization in intercultural communication in the TNHA context? And how do they construct and negotiate their identities in intercultural communication in the TNHA context? Let's discuss about the literature review first, specifically the critical perspective. A language practice or language production is believed to be power infused. It means that when we do the language practices, language productions, it's never natural. It's always a political act, and it contains a hidden agenda behind it. Some scholars also argue that language is socially situated action, and maybe all of us agree with this argument because when we have a language practice, we consider the situation, the context, the participant, the agenda, where we have the conversation or the interaction or the language production itself. Because it is socially situated, it brings a wide range of iconic, indexical, and symbolic meanings that has impacted on the constructions of social inequality. Some of scholars also believe that language is a set of resources involving in indexical interpretation of social differences and normative experience. When we discuss about normative expectations, we have to look at the axiological aspects, the values of good or bad, the values of right or wrongs, and even about the values of being native and non-native. The next terminology that we are going to discuss is language socialization. It is a process where newcomers in a community or culture socialize with the experienced speakers by using language. It views the positioning of individuals involved in as fluid. So that's why we, as the involvers in a language socialization, as the actors of language socializations, we become like water. When water is put into a certain place, it is shaped as the place where it is put in. So that's how we also, as the individuals, when we involve in a language socialization, we try to adapt, we try to construct, and we try to look at, consider the context, the situation, the space, the time where we are having the language socialization itself. Language socialization is developed, is conducted to gain communicative competence, membership, and legitimacy in the group, such what we already had at the first time we interacted by WhatsApp group and by Zoom meeting. If you remember, guys, we try to interact with each other to do language socializations in order to get legitimacy from the members of our class. Language socialization is also become the media to develop our linguistic and sociocultural knowledge, including the pragmatic, the body language, and also the political issue, social issue, democracy, and many more variables. That's why language socialization is not merely about interactional activity, but also about bidirectional. It because in doing language socialization, all of the participants, both addresser and addressee, interact each other. They share their knowledge. They share and construct their knowledge, their competence, and then the values, beliefs, and etc. Next terminology is identity. Identity is socially embedded and discursively constructed. So by doing the social activity, we can construct our identity by considering the logical meaning in it, by considering how logic the process is. Identity is not static and fixed, but it is multiple and dynamic. Yes, it can be shaped and reshaped and then adapt to the social and linguistic context. We can construct our identity and reconstruct our identity by considering the social and the linguistic context. Language users can mobilize their linguistic resource. We can negotiate meaning by linguistic resource that we transfer. We can reshape our relationship with the interlocutors by mobilizing our linguistic resource. And we can also make impacts on the environments by mobilizing our linguistic resource. How do this study was conducted? The study was conducted in the TNHA University. It is a multicultural setting, and it established English teaching and learning environments because the students are coming from different countries and cultures. And it integrates the inheritance of Chinese culture as well as the world culture. The participants of the study consisted of 12 Chinese students from various years level, origins, genders, study program, and foreign language capabilities. And in terms of academic aspect, they belong to high achievers students. The data then were collected by employing two instruments, the observation and semi-structured interview. Observation was conducted twice during the field trip, and the semi-structured interview was conducted to the 12 Chinese students in Mandarin. And the data were analyzed thematically by proposing four themes. The first one is identity construction, pecking, and then pecking order of language, reciprocal language socialization, and individual agency. That later on uh, divided into classified into three themes in data presentation. So this is the finding of this study. The first theme is related to pecking orders, group segregation, and ESL identity. The first finding is the students, the participants, the Chinese students perceive English as the language for intercultural communication. When the Chinese students converse with Chinese students, they converse in Chinese language. When the Chinese student converse with international student, they converse in English. And when the international student converse with the native speaker, they converse in English. And they believe that this situation leads them to be in different group segregation because of the power dynamics. So what happens to their beliefs and assumption regarding the language used in this university leads to the power dynamics. That's why they pursue speaking native like English, and they have a lack of self-confidence because they claim themselves to have awkward English. They say that although they can imitate the native speakers of English, they can never be like native. And that's why they have a belief that English becomes superior over Chinese in this university. And all of these findings is a projections of power interplay, which is proposed by, the theory is proposed by Darwin in 2012. The next theme is asymmetrical status of language in socialization. This study found that the students argue and believe they can report a series of linguistic and non-linguistic knowledge when they have the language socialization, including the pragmatic, the body language of their interlocutors, and even the issues happen worldwide, the political issues, and then discrimination, social issue, democracy, and etc. It also helped them to develop their deep understanding of the socio-political issue that happens in China, in their own country. Chinese students also maintain and emphasize their own cultural norms because they have different lifestyle and interests in entertainment. Sometimes they try to spirit themselves from their international peers, and when they do the communication or language socializations, they feel that it is only them, the Chinese students, specifically their own identity becomes the one who is pushed into a role of passive information receiver. Although they have although they are not interested and they do not understand the topic that they are discussing, they feel like they are pushed to get involved in that conversation. So they believe that the Chinese power is less than the English power. That's why they feel like they do not have equal foot. They do not stand on the equal foot with their international peer in communication. And the last theme is reciprocal language socialization and multilingual Chinese identity. The Chinese students try to do Chineseation by facilitating the international students using Chinese language, and also try to socialize their Chinese culture. And the international student can gain more objective understanding, more can be more wide awake of China, and they started to eliminate their stereotype and labels toward China and Chinese people. Another finding is about the adoptions of urban Chinese lifestyle. The international students try to adopt the style, for example, in using chat platform instead of using WhatsApp. That is very common uh, for the international students in USA, for example. They adopt it by using WeChat, which is very common in China, and also using online catering service. Next is multilingual Chinese identity has empowered Chinese students. Of course, when the Chinese students are multilingual, they are able to empower themselves by developing their experience, their competence, and knowledge of what they are discussing, the knowledge and the cultures and the social issue, and many more information and knowledge that were shared during the language socialization. The precondition for the intercultural speaker is that they expect to have a critical awareness of one's own cultures, and then values and beliefs, so that they will be more wide awake, they will be more open-minded, and will be more tolerant of their interlocutors' belief, values, and behavior. So we come to the conclusion. The first one is the process of intercultural communication among different language users is a process of reciprocal language socialization. And then multilingual Chinese identity has been constructed when they mobilize their multilingual and cultural resources. And the next is an asymmetrical power relationship between Chinese students and their native English speaking peers in a conversation may produce separation or discrimination among the two groups in this university, the Chinese and the international students. The rising influence of the Chinese language and culture has also impacted on the linguistic and social cultural landscape of the domestic education during the internationalization process. And the last one is transnational universities can draw upon their multilingual and multicultural resources to develop critical cultural awareness among students. And the limitation of this study, because this study was conducted only by the perspective of the Chinese student itself, the researchers recommended the readers to dig more understanding and more findings by considering two perspectives, the Chinese students and also the international students perspective, to have a diverse findings. That's all my presentations about a journal review. Thank you for your nice attention, and see you in the class, Ibu and friends.